I signed the deed under a limited liability company because I wanted to be a ghost. After the divorce, silence was the only luxury I craved. So I bought a weathered cottage that smelled of salt and old cedar. I had not even unpacked my first box when my sister, Tessa, called. She was not asking for permission. She was telling me she was arriving with 12 strangers. In one breath, the piece I had paid for was already gone. The key felt heavy in my palm, a distinct, serrated weight that promised something I had not felt in 3 years. Ownership, not the joint kind, where signatures are shared and decisions are compromises, but the singular, terrifying kind. I stood on the porch of the cottage, listening to the wind rattle the loose screen door. The structure was modest, a single-story box wrapped in cedar shakes that had grayed under decades of salt spray and neglect. It sat on a patch of sandy soil at the very end of a dead-end road, separated from the actual beach by a dune of sea oats and 100 yards of boardwalk. It was not a mansion, it was barely a house, but it was mine, to the rest of the world. Specifically the county tax assessor. This property belonged to a limited liability company called Blue Heron Holdings. I had spent $600 filing the paperwork to create the entity, a shield of anonymity designed to keep my name off the public registry. It was the first decision I had made purely for myself since the ink dried on my divorce papers, and certainly the first decision I had made since the burnout claimed my career in marketing 6 months ago. I unlocked the door and pushed it open. The air inside was stale, smelling of pine sol and old wood, but beneath that, there was the faint, sharp scent of the Atlantic. I stepped inside. My footsteps echoed on the hardwood floors, which were scuffed and badly in need of refinishing. I had 33 years of life behind me, and standing in that empty living room, I felt every single one of them. I went back to my car, a sensible sedan packed to the roof with thrifted furniture, boxes of kitchenware, and paint samples I had agonized over for weeks. I hauled in a second-hand armchair first, dragging it across the floorboards. Then came a box of books, then a lamp with a slightly crooked shade. By the time I had unloaded the car, the sun was beginning to dip, casting long orange shadows across the room. I sat in the armchair, surrounded by my meager possessions, and waited for the feeling of relief to wash over me. I waited for the cinematic moment where I would sigh, look out the window, and feel whole again. It did not come. Instead, a cold wave of anxiety tightened my chest. The silence was absolute. There was no television humming, no husband asking what was for dinner, no emails pinging on a phone I had deliberately left in the glove compartment. It was just me and the sound of the house settling as the temperature dropped. Peace, I realized with a jolt, felt suspicious. It felt like the eye of a storm. Not the end of one. I had spent so long navigating crisis, the breakdown of my marriage, the collapse of my professional boundaries, the endless demands of my family, that the absence of chaos felt like a threat. I found myself checking the lock on the front door 3 times. I checked the windows. I paced the small perimeter of the kitchen, my heart hammering against my ribs. I forced myself to go outside. The evening air was cooling, biting at my bare arms. I walked down the short driveway to the edge of the road, needing to see another human being just to confirm that I had not fallen off the edge of the earth. A truck rumbled slowly down the street, an old Ford with rust eating away at the wheel wells. It slowed as it approached my driveway, then rolled to a stop. The window cranked down with a squeal. The man behind the wheel looked to be in his late 60s, with skin the texture of a worn saddle and a baseball cap pulled low over gray eyes. He looked at me, then at the house, then back to me. "You are the new one," he stated. It was not a question. I nodded, wrapping my cardigan tighter around myself. "Yes, I closed on it yesterday. I am Hazel." He did not offer a name. He just leaned an elbow out the window. "Place has been empty for a bit. The last owner, a fellow from the city, he left in a hurry, put it on the market on a Tuesday, and was gone by Friday. That is fast," I said, trying to be polite. The man chewed on the inside of his cheek. "Some folks are not cut out for the quiet. They think they want it. but the quiet has a way of getting loud if you are not ready for it. I forced a smile. I think I'm ready for it. He looked me up and down, not in a creepy way, but in an assessing way, like he was checking the hull of a boat for leaks. He nodded slowly. Maybe. Just watch out for strays. Strays? I asked, glancing at the bushes. You mean cats? No, he said. He looked toward the darkened windows of my house. I mean people. This town is funny, and people get attached to places they did not pay for, especially beach houses. They think because they have memories there. They own the view. I frowned, confused by the phrasing. Well, nobody has memories here but me. I said, and I intend to keep it that way. He gave a short, dry chuckle. Good luck with that. Hazel. He rolled up the window and drove off, leaving me standing in the driveway with the salt spray settling on my skin. I dismissed the conversation as small-town weirdness, the kind of cryptic local color you find in novels, not real life. I went back inside, locked the door for the 4th time, and ate a dinner of crackers and hummus sitting on the floor. The next morning, I began my life. I established a routine with the rigor of a soldier. I woke at 6. I put on a kettle for tea. I did not touch my phone until I had consumed the entire cup and stared at the ocean from my back porch for at least 20 minutes. I decided to tackle the house one room at a time. The living room was first. I spent the morning taping off the baseboards and priming the walls, covering the dingy beige with a crisp, clean white called chantilly lace. There was something deeply therapeutic about the physical labor. My muscles ached. My hair was dusted with drywall powder, and for the first time in months, my brain was quiet. At noon, I sat at the small kitchen table I had bought from a garage sale and opened a fresh notebook. On the first page, I wrote a title in bold, black ink, What I Will Not Apologize For. I stared at the paper. This was an exercise my therapist had suggested before I stopped seeing her, claiming I could not afford the sessions anymore. I will not apologize for being unavailable. I will not apologize for spending my savings on this house. I will not apologize for needing silence. I will not apologize for not having children yet. I will not apologize to Tessa. I hesitated on the last one. My sister, Tessa, was 5 years older than me. She was vibrant, chaotic, and consumed oxygen in a room like a flash fire. We had been close once, or at least, enmeshed, but as I had crumbled under the weight of my divorce, Tessa had been curiously absent, surfacing only to ask for small loans or to complain about her own vague, dramatic problems. I closed the notebook. I did not want to think about Tessa. I wanted to paint. My phone rang at 2 p.m. I had placed it on the kitchen counter, screen down. When it buzzed, the sound against the formica was like a drill. I picked it up. The name on the screen made my stomach drop. Tessa. I stared at it. I could let it go to voicemail. I could pretend I was out on the dunes, out of range, but the conditioning ran deep. If I did not answer, she would call Mom. If she called Mom, Mom would panic and call me, assuming I was dead in a ditch. I slid my thumb across the screen. Hello? Hazel. Her voice was a shriek of artificial sweetness, so high-pitched it distorted the speaker. Oh my God. I am so proud of you. I blinked, holding the paint roller in my other hand. Thank you, I said cautiously. Mom told me you finally got the keys. Tessa rushed on. I mean, I know you were being all super secretive about it, which is so weird. Hazel, honestly, but I get it. You are in your healing era. I totally honor that. I stiffened. I had specifically asked our mother not to share the details of the closing until I was settled. I asked Mom to keep it quiet. I said, keeping my voice even. Oh, you know, Mom, Tessa said, dismissing my boundary with a laugh. She is just excited. But listen, that is not why I'm calling. I wanted to surprise you. My grip on the phone tightened. Surprise me how? Well, I was looking at the calendar, and I realized this weekend is perfect. The weather is supposed to be gorgeous. So, I am coming down. No, the word formed in my throat instantly. And, she continued, steamrolling right over my silence. I am bringing a few people, just a tiny housewarming weekend. Nothing crazy. We will bring all the food and drinks. You will not have to lift a finger. We are going to christen the place properly. I took a deep breath, looking around my half-painted living room. There was no furniture other than the chair and the table. There were no beds. There was one towel. "Tessa," I said, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. "That is not going to work." "What?" She sounded genuinely baffled. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I just got here yesterday," I said. "The house is a wreck. I am painting. I do not have beds. I do not have plates. I am not ready for guests." "Oh, Hazel, do not be dramatic," she said, her tone shifting from sweet to patronizing. "We do not need beds. We can bring air mattresses. We are not high maintenance. It is just me and some friends." "How many friends?" I asked, dread coiling in my gut. There was a pause. "Just 12. I nearly dropped the phone. 12? Tessa, are you insane? The house is 1,200 square feet. There is one bathroom. I cannot have 13 people here. It is 12 people total. Including me," she corrected, as if that made a difference. "And they are super chill. They are my wellness circle. We just need a space to decompress. Honestly, Hazel, I really need this. My anxiety has been through the roof lately." I closed my eyes. I bought this house to escape anxiety, not to host a convention for it. "Tessa," I said, firmly this time, "no, you cannot come this weekend. I am not hosting." The silence on the other end lasted 3 seconds, but it felt like an hour. When she spoke again, the sweetness was gone. The voice that replaced it was cold, sharp, and dripping with martyrdom. "After everything I have done for you?" I blinked at the wall. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," she snapped. "When you were going through the divorce, who was there? Who listened to you cry for hours? And now, the one time I ask for a tiny favor, a tiny bit of support because I'm struggling, you shut the door in my face? I thought this was a family house." I rubbed my temples. "First of all, you were not there when I was crying. I was alone in my apartment while you were in Tulum. Second, this is not a family house. I bought it. My name is on the deed, or rather, my LLC. Hazel, you are being so selfish," she said, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "I promised these girls a retreat. I cannot cancel now. I would look like an idiot." "Do you want me to look like an idiot?" I felt the old guilt hook into my ribs, familiar and rusty. I hated that it worked. I hated that I felt responsible for her reputation. "Look," I said, trying to find a middle ground. "I cannot handle a group, not right now, but if you want to come down in a few weeks, just you, we can do a weekend. Just sisters. I can get the spare room ready by then." I waited for her to accept. It was a reasonable offer, a generous one, considering I wanted to be alone. She did not answer immediately. Then, I heard a sigh. "Whatever. Hazel, we will figure it out. Love you." She hung up before I could respond. I stood there, staring at the phone. My heart was racing. I felt like I had just run a sprint, but I had said no. I had offered a compromise. I had held the line. I put the phone down and went back to painting. I turned on some music, trying to drown out the lingering sound of her voice in my head. I told myself it was handled. She was annoyed, sure, but she would get over it. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed with a text message. I wiped my hands on a rag and picked it up. It was from Tessa. It was an image file, a digital flyer. Coastal Reset, a wellness weekend. Hosted by Tessa Watson. Sunrise Yoga. Organic Juice Bar. Ocean Meditation. Videography by Marco. Below the title was a schedule. Friday arrival, 4 p.m. Saturday, beach yoga at 6 a.m. Sunset dinner. Sunday, closing circle. And at the bottom, in small font, was my address. I stared at the screen, my mouth dry. She had not canceled. She had not accepted my compromise. She had sent an itinerary, and she was bringing a videographer. I typed a reply, my fingers shaking. "Tessa, I said no. You cannot bring a group here. I am serious. 3 dots appeared instantly. Then a message. Do not worry. We will bring our own sheets. Marco needs to shoot some B-roll of the house for the vlog. So just make sure the living room is not too messy. See you Friday. I felt a surge of rage so hot it made my vision blur. This was not a visit. This was a production. She was using my home, my sanctuary, as a set for her social media life. I dialed her number. It went straight to voicemail. I dialed again. Voicemail. I sat down on the floor, the smell of fresh paint suddenly making me nauseous. How did she even have the address? I had been so careful. I had used a P.O. box for the mail. I had used the LLC. I scrolled through my contacts and found my mother's number. I hit call. Hi. Honey? Mom's voice was cheerful, oblivious. How is the beach? Mom, I said, cutting through the pleasantries. Did you give Tessa my address? There was a pause, a hesitation that told me everything. Well, Hazel. She called me and she was so excited to send you a housewarming gift. She said she wanted to send flowers. I did not think it was a big deal. It is a big deal. Mom, I said, my voice rising. I told you explicitly not to share the location. I wanted privacy. Oh, stop it, Mom said, her tone dismissive. She is your sister. Family does not have privacy from family. Besides, she is going through a hard time. She needs this. She is bringing 12 people. Mom, 12. And a camera crew. That is just her job. Hazel, you know she is an influencer. She has to create content. You should be supportive. She is finally finding her footing. I closed my eyes, pressing the phone against my ear until it hurt. Supportive. The word was a weapon in our family. Always pointed at me. Mom, I asked, my voice dropping. How did you even have the address? I never gave it to you. I told you I bought a place in a beach town, but I never gave you the street number. The line went silent. I could hear her breathing. Well, I saw it. She said vaguely. Saw it where? I saw some paperwork, okay? You left a folder on the counter when you visited last month. It had the town name and the street. I just made a mental note. I felt a chill run down my spine. I had visited last month, yes, but I had kept my folder in my zipped bag. I had never left it on the counter. You went through my bag? I whispered. I was looking for a pen. Mom cried, defensive now. Good Lord. Hazel, you are acting like I am a spy. I am your mother. I saw a piece of paper. Why are you being so paranoid? I am not being paranoid. I said, I am being violated. I hung up. I sat in the darkening living room, the unfinished white wall glowing in the twilight. My mother had gone through my bag. My sister was treating my home like a free Airbnb. And somewhere, in the background, there was a sense that this had been orchestrated. The paperwork, the timing. I stood up and walked to the kitchen. I needed to stop this. I needed to be the person who wrote that list in the notebook. I will not apologize. I opened a new text message to Tessa. I needed to be clear. I needed to be firm. I could not leave any wiggle room for misunderstandings. I typed, Tessa, listen to me. You cannot come. The house is not ready, and I am not open to guests. If you show up with 12 people, I will not let you in. This is not a negotiation. Do not drive down here. I stared at the send button. My thumb hovered over the blue arrow. I imagined the fallout, the screaming phone calls, the texts from distant cousins asking why I was being so mean to Tessa, the narrative that would be spun. Hazel, the bitter divorcee, sitting alone in her beach house, locking out her glowing, happy sister who just wanted to spread love. I imagined becoming the villain in their story again. The fisherman's words echoed in my mind. People get attached to places they did not pay for. I looked at the message again. It was reasonable. It was sane. It was necessary. But my hand was shaking. I was 33 years old, a homeowner, a survivor of a brutal corporate career and a failed marriage. And yet, the thought of sending a text message to my older sister made me want to vomit. I lowered the phone. I did not send it. Not yet. I told myself I would send it in the morning. I told myself I just needed to sleep on the phrasing. But deep down, as I curled up on the mattress on the floor in the empty bedroom, listening to the ocean roar outside, I knew the truth. I was afraid, and my sister knew it. I fell asleep with the phone in my hand, the drafted message glowing on the screen until the battery saver turned it dark. Part 1 was over. The peace was gone. The invasion had begun before the first car even pulled into the driveway. The next morning, the sun was bright and offensive. It streamed through the uncurtained windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I woke with a stiff neck and a sense of dread that sat in my stomach like a stone. I checked my phone. The draft was still there. Tessa, listen to me. I deleted it. It was too aggressive, too emotional. If I sent that, she would just call me hysterical. I needed to be colder, more bureaucratic. I needed to speak the language of the LLC, not the sister. I sat on the floor with my coffee and drafted a new message. Tessa, the property is not insured for events or groups. I can allow a maximum of 2 guests for a day visit only. No overnight stays. No filming on the premises due to liability. If this does not work for you, we will have to reschedule. I read it over. It was dry. It was logical. It blamed insurance and liability. 2 things Tessa knew nothing about and therefore might respect. I took a deep breath and hit send. There, it was done. I had set a boundary. I stood up, feeling a rush of adrenaline. I had done it. I had protected my space. I went back to the living room and picked up the paintbrush. I would finish the walls today. Then I would go to the hardware store and buy new locks, just in case. 10 minutes later, my phone pinged. I walked over to it, expecting an argument, expecting Tessa to fight back. Instead, there was a single heart emoji, and then, of course, babe, totally get it. See you soon. I stared at the screen. She had not agreed to the terms. She had acknowledged the message, but she had not agreed. The see you soon was ambiguous. I felt a sinkhole open in my stomach. She was coming anyway. She was going to ignore the rules, bring the crowd, and bank on the fact that I would be too embarrassed to cause a scene in front of strangers. She was counting on my politeness to override my boundaries. I looked out the window at the empty driveway. I had 2 days. 2 days to figure out how to stop a freight train with a piece of paper. I went back to the wall and painted with aggressive, sharp strokes, burying the beige under layers of white, trying to convince myself that this was still my house. But the air had changed. The salt smell was still there, but now it was mixed with the metallic taste of impending conflict. I was about to find out exactly how much my peace was worth. I stared at the screen of my phone, the blue bubble of my message sitting there like a small, digital shield. The property is not insured for events or groups. I can allow a maximum of 2 guests for a day visit only. No overnight stays. No filming on the premises due to liability. It was clear. It was precise. It was the sort of text a lawyer might send, or a landlord, or anyone who was not a younger sister conditioned by 3 decades of guilt. I had stripped all the emotion out of it. There were no apologies, no softening words like maybe or sorry. I waited, my thumb hovering over the glass, expecting the 3 dots of a typing indicator to appear and last for minutes. I expected a phone call. I expected a wall of text detailing how selfish I was. Instead, less than 60 seconds later, a notification slid down from the top of the screen. Tessa. Of course. Babe. Totally get it. See you soon. And a red heart emoji. I lowered the phone, the relief I expected nowhere to be found. In its place was a heavy, cold dread that settled in the pit of my stomach. The, of course, was not an agreement. It was a dismissal. It was the verbal equivalent of patting a child on the head while reaching over them to grab the cookie jar. She had not read the terms. She had scanned them, categorized them as Hazel being neurotic, and decided to proceed exactly as planned. But I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that, of course, meant she was coming alone, or with one friend, and that they would stay at a hotel. I wanted to believe that my sister respected me enough to read a sentence and understand what it meant. I spent the next 24 hours in a state of fragile denial. I painted the trim in the hallway. I walked to the ocean and stood in the surf until my ankles went numb. I ate dinner on the floor and told myself that I was overreacting. Then came Saturday morning. I woke early, intending to enjoy the silence before whatever reduced version of Tessa's visit occurred. The sun was just crowning over the dunes, painting the sky in soft purples and golds. I made coffee and stepped out onto the front porch, wrapping my cardigan around me against the dawn chill. The silence was perfect. It was the reason I had drained my savings. It was the reason I had spent hours on the phone with insurance agents and utility companies. Then, a rumble broke the air. A large white box truck turned onto my street. It was moving slowly, the brakes squealing as it navigated the narrow road. I watched it, assuming it was a delivery for a neighbor, maybe some lumber for a renovation down the block. But the truck did not pass. It slowed as it reached my mailbox, the air brakes hissing loudly, and backed into my driveway. I stood frozen on the porch, my coffee mug halfway to my mouth. The side of the truck was emblazoned with bright red letters: Coastal Event Rentals, Parties, Weddings, Corporate. A man in a blue uniform jumped out of the cab. Holding a clipboard, he looked at the house, then at his clipboard, then at me. "Morning," he called out, walking up the driveway. "Delivery for Tessa Watson?" I did not move to meet him. I stayed on the porch, using the railing as a barrier. "Tessa does not live here," I said. He stopped, checking the paper again. "Address matches. 104 Dune Road. Order is for a Tessa Watson. Contact number ending in 4545. That was Tessa's number. "What is the delivery?" I asked, my voice tight. He flipped a page. "We have got 4 folding banquet tables, 20 white Chiavari chairs, 1 balloon arch kit, neutral tones, and 2 commercial coolers. Oh, and a portable generator." I felt the blood drain from my face. Tables, chairs, a balloon arch. This was not a visit. This was infrastructure. "There must be a mistake," I said, gripping the mug so hard my knuckles turned white. "I am the owner of this property. I did not authorize any event rentals." The driver shrugged, looking bored. He had clearly dealt with confusion before and did not care. "Look, lady, the order is paid for and scheduled for drop-off between 8 and 10 in the morning. If you want to refuse delivery, you can. But there is a restocking fee of $200 plus the driver time. I cannot accept this." I said, "You have to take it back." He sighed, clicking his pen. "Okay, you need to sign here refusing delivery, but just so you know, the client, Tessa, is going to get hit with the charge." And usually, when this happens, they call the office screaming. I looked at the truck. If I sent it away, I would be declaring war before Tessa even arrived. I would be costing her money. I would be the difficult one. The fear of that label, the irrational, deeply ingrained fear of being the problem, made me hesitate. "Who paid for this?" I asked. The driver glanced at his manifest. "Credit card on file. Looks like a corporate card. Glow and Gather Lifestyle." The name rang a bell. It was a mid-tier wellness brand that sold overpriced vitamins and yoga mats. Tessa had mentioned them once or twice, claiming she was manifesting a partnership with them. It hit me then. This was not just a party. This was work. Tessa had sold this weekend. She had sold my house. "I need to make a call," I said. I went inside, leaving the driver standing in the driveway, and dialed the number for Coastal Event Rentals listed on the side of the truck. A woman answered on the second ring. "Coastal Events. This is Sarah." "Hi," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I am calling about a delivery currently sitting in my driveway at 104 Dune Road. The name on the order is Tessa Watson." "Yes, I see that order," the woman said. "Is there a problem?" "I am the property owner." I said, "I did not authorize this rental. I need to cancel it." There was the sound of typing on the other end. "Okay, well, the order was placed 3 weeks ago. It is fully paid. If you want to cancel, we can do that. But since the truck is already on site, we cannot refund the delivery fee or the rush processing." "I do not care about the refund," I said, though I did. "I care about the fact that I did not order this. Who authorized the payment? The cardholder is listed as a verified corporate account. The woman said, We have a signature on file authorizing the drop-off. Whose signature? I asked. Tessa Watson. She said. My hand shook. She had signed for a delivery to a house she did not own. For an event I had explicitly forbidden. Cancel it, I said. Send the truck away. I am sorry, the woman said, her voice turning bureaucratic. I cannot cancel a corporate order based on a phone call from a third party. The cardholder has to authorize the cancellation, or we need a police report stating the order is fraudulent. Otherwise, we are contracted to deliver the goods. I felt a wave of humiliation wash over me. I was standing in my own kitchen, looking out at my own driveway, and I was powerless. I could not even stop a folding table from crossing my threshold without calling the police on my own sister. I looked out the window. The driver was already unlatching the back of the truck. He was not waiting for my signature. He was on a schedule. I hung up the phone. I did not have the strength to call the police. Not yet. The shame of it, the idea of squad cars pulling up to handle a dispute over rental chairs, was too much. I walked back outside. Just put them in the driveway, I said, my voice hollow. Do not bring them inside. The driver nodded and began unloading. I watched as he stacked 20 white chairs on the gravel. They looked ridiculous against the backdrop of the wild. Unkempt dunes. They looked like teeth. By the time the truck left, it was 9 a.m. I sat on the porch steps, staring at the pile of event equipment, feeling like a squatter on my own land. At 9:30, the invasion arrived. It was not one car, it was 3. A gleaming black SUV led the convoy, followed by 2 white Jeeps. They turned onto the road with an aggressive speed. Kicking up dust, they looked like a military convoy for people who bought $5 coffees. They pulled into the driveway, blocking me in. Doors opened in unison. Tessa emerged from the driver's seat of the black SUV. She looked impeccable. She was wearing a flowing linen dress in a shade of oatmeal that probably cost more than my first car, and a wide-brimmed hat. She removed her sunglasses with a theatrical flourish and scanned the property. "Hazel!" she screamed, throwing her arms up. She ran toward me, actually ran, and engulfed me in a hug before I could even stand up. She smelled of expensive coconut oil and ambition. She squeezed me tight, pressing her cheek against mine. For a second, it felt like affection. Then, she whispered into my ear, her voice dropping an octave, sharp and hissing. "Please do not embarrass me this weekend." She pulled back instantly, beaming, her face rearranging into a mask of pure joy. "Oh my God, look at you. You look so rested." I stood there, the warning echoing in my ear. "Do not embarrass me." She had flipped the script before the first bag was even unpacked. If I objected, if I pointed out the rental chairs or the boundary text, I would be the one causing a scene. I would be the embarrassment. Behind her, the other car doors opened. People spilled out. They were not just friends. They were a production crew. I counted 1, 2, 3, 11 people excluding Tessa, 12 including her. They did not look like people here for a beach weekend. One man was carrying a large Pelican case that clearly held camera equipment. Another woman was holding a reflector shield. A third person, a guy with a severe undercut and a clipboard, immediately started pointing at my porch. "Okay, let's get the load-in done before the light gets too harsh." The clipboard guy said, "I want the welcome station set up by the trellis." "Excuse me?" I said, stepping forward. Tessa grabbed my arm, linking hers through mine. "Hazel, meet the tribe. That is Marco, our visionary. He is doing the video. That is Chloe. She is managing the socials. And that is Ben. He is doing the sound baths." "Sound baths?" I repeated. Ben, a man with a man bun and a deeply serious expression, nodded at me. "The acoustics here are actually quite challenging," he said, looking at the ocean disapprovingly. "The waves are going to interfere with the crystal bowls. We might need to soundproof the living room." "You are not soundproofing my living room," I said. Tessa laughed. A tinkling. Fake sound. Oh, he is just kidding. Listen, everyone, this is my baby sister, Hazel. She is the sweet soul who is letting us crash here. She is a little shy, so be gentle. She framed me as a charity case, a sweet soul, a prop, Marco, the videographer, walked past me without making eye contact. He walked right up to my front door and pushed it open. "Hey!" I shouted. Tessa squeezed my arm harder, her nails digging into my skin. "Hazel, stop!" she hissed under her breath. "He just needs to check the lighting. He is walking into my house." Tessa. "We are all walking into the house. Hazel, we have to unpack." She pulled me toward the door. I resisted, planting my feet, but the momentum of the group was against me. They flowed around me like water around a rock. They were carrying bags, coolers, yoga mats, tripods. They were chattering, laughing, commenting on the rustic vibe of the siding. I saw my neighbor, the fisherman, standing at the end of his driveway. He was watching the spectacle with a flat, unreadable expression. Tessa saw him too. She let go of me and trotted down the driveway, waving. "Hi there," she called out, her voice dripping with charm. "So sorry about the noise. We are just getting settled. I am Tessa, the owner's sister." The fisherman nodded once, slowly, and turned back to his house. He did not wave back. Tessa returned, looking triumphant. Such a cute local character. She said, "We should get him on the B-roll. Authentic texture." I followed her into the house, my heart hammering against my ribs. Inside, it was chaos. My carefully placed furniture was already being moved. The thrifted armchair I had dragged in alone was being shoved into a corner by the social media manager. "Chloe, we need to clear the floor for the opening circle," Chloe said, not looking at me. "Can we move this table?" "It is kind of clunky. That is my dining table," I said. Chloe looked at me as if I had spoken in a foreign language. "Okay? Well, it is in the shot." Tessa appeared, clapping her hands. "Okay. Team, we have 2 hours until the live stream teaser. I want the kitchen staged with the products. Where are the supplements?" "Supplements?" I asked. Tessa ignored me. "Marco, get the wide shot of the window before the sun moves." I watched as strangers touched my things. A woman in athletic gear opened my refrigerator and started taking out my food, my hummus, my milk, my apples, and replacing them with rows of identical glass bottles filled with green liquid. "What are you doing?" I asked, stepping into the kitchen. "Clearing the palette," she said briskly. "Brand alignment. We can put your stuff back later." She put my groceries in a cardboard box on the floor. I felt a stinging sensation in my eyes. It was not sadness. It was the sharp, hot prick of violation. They were erasing me. In my own house, I was being edited out of the frame. I walked out of the kitchen, needing to find Tessa. I needed to stop this. I found her in the hallway. She was on her phone, her back to me. Her voice was different now, lower, professional, confident. "Yeah, we just arrived." She was saying, "The space is perfect, rustic, coastal, very authentic. Yeah, it is my family's beach place. We have had it for years. It has that lived-in energy you cannot buy." I froze. My family's beach place. The lie was so casual, so easy. She claimed the history, the ownership, the very atmosphere of the house, stripping away the fact that I was the one who had signed the mortgage. I was the one who had drained my 401k. I was the one who had sat in the lawyer's office with shaking hands. She turned around and saw me standing there. She did not look guilty. She just held up a finger, signaling me to wait. "Yeah, the signal is great. We will go live at noon." "Okay, bye." She hung up and smiled at me. "What's up? Hayes?" I grabbed her arm and pulled her into the bedroom, the only room that still had a door. I slammed it shut and locked it. "Hey," she said, rubbing her arm. "What is your problem?" "My problem?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "My problem is that you are lying. You just told someone this is your family's beach house. You told them you have had it for years. So?" She rolled her eyes. "It is just marketing. Hazel, nobody cares about the LLC paperwork. It is a narrative. Family home sounds better than my sister's panic buy foreclosure. I did not buy a foreclosure. I snapped. And who was that on the phone? She hesitated. Her eyes darted to the door, then back to me. That was the sponsor. So it is a sponsorship, I said. You lied to me. You said it was a housewarming. You said it was a wellness weekend for friends, but you sold a retreat to a brand. Tessa sighed, dropping the act. She slumped onto the unmade bed, suddenly looking tired. Okay, fine. Yes, it is a sponsored content trip. Are you happy? I pitched a reset retreat to Glow and Gather. They are launching a new line of stress relief botanicals. I promised them a private coastal property for the backdrop. And you did not think to ask me? I asked. You did not think to ask the person who owns the property? I knew you would say no, she cried, throwing her hands up. You are so uptight lately. Hazel, you would have asked for contracts and insurance and made it a whole thing. I just need to get the content. It is harmless. It is literally just 2 posts and a reel. It is not harmless, I said. You have a truck full of rental furniture in my driveway. You have a camera crew moving my furniture. You have people putting my food in boxes. I will put it back, she shouted. God, you are so petty. I took a breath. Tessa, listen to me. No filming, and no guests overnight. Those were my conditions. You have to send them to a hotel. She stared at me. Her face crumpled. The anger vanished, replaced by a sudden, watery desperation that looked terrifyingly real. I can't, she whispered. Why not? Because I don't have the money for a hotel. Hazel. Tears spilled over her lashes. I am broke, okay? Is that what you want to hear? I am completely tapped out. My credit cards are maxed. This sponsorship is the only thing keeping me afloat. If I deliver this content, they pay me a retainer that covers my rent for the next 3 months. If I don't, I am done. I stared at her. Tessa had always been the successful one. The one with the designer bags, the trips to Bali, the apartment in the city. What do you mean you are broke? I asked. Where did the money go? She wiped her eyes, smearing her mascara. It is complicated. The algorithm changed. My engagement tanked. I made some bad investments. Just, please, I am begging you, do not kick us out. Do not ruin this for me. I just need 2 days. 2 days to shoot this, and then I will be out of your hair. I will fix everything. She reached out and took my hands. Her palms were clammy. Please, Hazel, be my sister for once. Help me. I looked at her. I saw the fear in her eyes. It was raw. It was the first honest thing I had seen all day, but I also saw the manipulation. She was weaponizing her failure just like she had weaponized her success. When she was up, I was the charity case. Now that she was down, I was the lifeline. In both scenarios, she felt entitled to use me. I pulled my hands away. I am not kicking you out right this second, I said, my voice quiet. But you are not filming in my bedroom, and you are not filming me. She nodded rapidly. Deal. Totally. No bedroom shots. No shots of you. You can just hide out in here while we work downstairs. Hide out. In my own house. Thank you, she breathed. You are the best. Seriously. She stood up, checked her reflection in the mirror, fixed her mascara with a practiced swipe of her finger, and opened the door. The noise from downstairs rushed in. Laughter. The clatter of equipment. The thumping bass of a Bluetooth speaker. We are going to crush this, she said to herself, her energy snapping back instantly. She walked out, leaving me alone in the bedroom. I did not go downstairs for the rest of the day. I stayed in the room, listening to the invasion. I heard them moving the dining table again. I heard the crash of something breaking. A glass? A plate? Followed by a chorus of oops and laughter. I heard Marco directing people. Chin up, hold the bottle higher, smile like you are at peace. I heard Tessa's voice, amplified, probably projecting to a phone screen. Hey guys, welcome to my sanctuary. This place is so special to my heart. I sat on the floor, my back against the locked door. I felt like a prisoner. The sun went down, and the house lit up with artificial lights. I could see the glow of their ring lights reflecting off the trees outside. I checked my phone. I had a text from my ex-husband. Mark. Saw Tessa's story. Looks like you guys are having a blast. Glad you're doing well. He had seen it. The world was seeing it. My private retreat was being broadcast as a party house. My stomach growled. My food was in a box in the kitchen. Guarded by a social media team, I had a stash of granola bars in my bag. I ate one, dry, washing it down with water from the bathroom tap. Around 10 o'clock. The music got louder. They were drinking now. I could hear the clink of bottles, the shrill laughter of people who were performing fun rather than having it. I realized then that Tessa's promise, "It is just 2 posts," was another lie. This was an occupation. They were settling in. They were not going to a hotel. They were going to sleep on my floor, on my couches, in my space. I crawled onto the mattress I had placed on the floor. I pulled the blanket up to my chin. I listened to the bass thumping through the floorboards. It vibrated in my teeth. Tessa was broke. That was the new piece of the puzzle. She was desperate, and desperate people did not respect boundaries. They ate them. I realized I could not ask them to leave. Asking had failed. Begging had failed. Reasoning had failed. The only thing left was force. I lay in the dark, my eyes wide open, listening to the strangers in my house, and for the first time, I stopped thinking about how to be a good sister. I started thinking about how to be a landlord. I started thinking about eviction. I needed to stop being Hazel, the little sister. I needed to be the LLC. I closed my eyes, but I did not sleep. I waited for the dawn, and for the war that would come with it. The sun had not yet cleared the tree line when I woke up, but the house was already humming with a low, electric tension. I had slept in my clothes, on top of the covers, clutching my phone like a weapon. The silence of the previous night had been replaced by the subtle, pervasive sounds of occupancy, the hum of a refrigerator that had been opened too many times, the creak of floorboards settling under the weight of strangers, the faint, lingering scent of vape smoke and expensive perfume. I unlocked my bedroom door and stepped into the hallway. The first thing I saw was the kitchen. It was unrecognizable. It was not that they had trashed it. In fact, it was cleaner than I had left it. But it was a terrifying, sterilized kind of clean. My toaster was gone. My knife block was gone. My mismatched mugs, the ones I had collected from thrift stores in 3 different states, were gone. In their place was a showroom. Lined up along the counter, with military precision, were 3 dozen amber glass bottles. They were arranged by height, their labels facing forward. Calm, Focus, Restore, beside my coffee maker, which had been scrubbed and repositioned to catch the morning light, was a perfectly folded linen napkin and a single, artfully placed sprig of dried eucalyptus. I stood in the doorway, feeling a sensation that was distinct from anger. It was disassociation. This was my kitchen. I had signed the mortgage papers. I had chosen the paint color. Yet, looking at this display, I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. They had not just moved my things. They had erased my existence to make room for a brand. Nothing was broken. Yet everything was wrong. The violation was not in the destruction, but in the replacement. It was a silent statement that my life, my taste, and my reality were not photogenic enough to exist in their world. I walked to the counter and picked up one of the bottles. Glow and Gather, Stress Relief Tincture. Hey, good morning. I turned. Standing by the sliding glass door was Chloe, the social media manager. She was wearing a matching beige sweatsuit and holding a phone on a gimbal stabilizer. She looked fresh, energetic, and completely unbothered by the fact that she was standing in a stranger's kitchen at 6 a.m. I put the bottle down. "Where are my things?" I asked. My voice sounded raspy. "Oh, we just boxed them up for the shoot," Chloe said, gesturing vaguely toward the pantry. We needed a clean aesthetic. The mismatched mugs were kind of busy. My life was busy. Listen, Chloe said, stepping closer, her eyes glued to her phone screen. We are doing a soft launch of the location in about 20 minutes. Just a teaser for the followers. A morning routine vibe. So if you could just, not be in the background? We want to keep the energy mysterious. I froze. A teaser? Yeah, she said, tapping away. We are going live to show the sunrise and the layout of the retreat space. Build the hype before the main event at noon. The blood drained from my face. You are showing the layout? I asked. You are broadcasting the interior of my house? Chloe looked up, confused. Well, yeah, that is the point. It is a house tour. People love real estate content. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had bought this house under an LLC for a reason. I had scrubbed my name from the internet. I had moved here to disappear, and now, my sister's team was about to broadcast the floor plan. The entry points, and the location of my bedroom to thousands of strangers on the internet. You cannot do that, I said. My voice was low, trembling. Chloe laughed. A short, dismissive sound. Relax. It is just Instagram. It is not like we are giving out the GPS coordinates. You posted the town yesterday, I said, and now you are showing the inside. Do you have any idea what that does to my security? Chloe rolled her eyes. You are being paranoid. Nobody is coming to rob you. I walked past her, my hands shaking. I needed to get out. I needed air. I pushed open the sliding door and stepped onto the deck, leaving her to her morning routine. The cool air hit my face, but it did not calm me. I walked down the steps to the sandy driveway, away from the house, away from the amber bottles and the gimbal. I needed legal ground to stand on. Emotion was not working. Logic was not working. I needed the law. I sat in my car, locked the doors, and pulled out my phone. I searched for real estate attorney in the local town. The first result was a man named Robert H. Miller. His office opened at 8. It was 7:30. I waited. I watched the house. I saw movement in the windows, shadows passing back and forth. They were like termites, eating the structure from the inside out. At 8 o'clock sharp, I dialed. A receptionist answered. Law office. I need to speak to someone about a trespassing issue on a private residence. I said, I am the owner. The occupants are refusing to leave. I was transferred to a paralegal. I explained the situation briefly. Guests invited by a relative. Invitation revoked. Refusal to vacate. Commercial activity taking place without a permit. The paralegal was calm. Her voice was dry and professional. A stark contrast to the breathless influencer speak I had been hearing for 24 hours. If you are the sole owner on the deed, she said, and there is no lease agreement in place, they are guests at will. If you have revoked that invitation and they refuse to leave, they are trespassing. You have the right to issue a formal notice to vacate. A notice to vacate. I repeated. The words felt solid. They felt heavy. Yes, she continued. It needs to be in writing. Date it. State clearly that permission to be on the property is revoked effective immediately. Give them a reasonable deadline. Usually 24 hours is standard for a civil dispute to avoid immediate police involvement, which can get messy. If they are still there after the deadline, you can call the sheriff to have them removed. Thank you, I whispered. I hung up. The panic that had been fluttering in my chest began to slow, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I was not a sister being difficult. I was a property owner dealing with unauthorized occupants. I got out of the car. I was not ready to drop the nuclear bomb yet. I had to try one last time, for Mom's sake, for the sake of the family dinners we might one day have again. I had to offer an off-ramp. I walked back into the house. The kitchen was now full. The team was eating breakfast. Acai bowls that had clearly been brought in, as I did not own acai. Tessa was in the center of the room, wearing a silk robe, directing Marco. Okay, I want the light to hit the bottle when I lift it, she was saying. Like a holy grail moment. Tessa, I said. The room went quiet. 11 pairs of eyes turned to me. I stood in the doorway, wearing yesterday's jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt, looking like an intruder in my own home. Can I speak to you? I asked. Alone, Tessa sighed. A theatrical exhale that signaled to everyone how difficult I was being. Fine, she said. Take 5. Guys. She followed me into the hallway. She crossed her arms, leaning against the wall. What is it now? Hazel? We are on a tight schedule. I took a breath. I am going to make you an offer. She raised an eyebrow. An offer? I will pay for a hotel. I said, there is a Marriott 3 towns over. I will book 5 rooms. You and your crew can sleep there. You can shower there. You can have your retreat there. Tessa laughed. You are joking. The Marriott? That does not fit the aesthetic. Hazel, I am not finished. I said, I will pay for the hotel, and tomorrow we can have a picnic on the beach. Just us. No cameras, no phones, just sisters. I looked at her, searching for the person she used to be. The sister who had taught me how to braid hair. The sister who had protected me from bullies in middle school. Tessa's face hardened, her eyes narrowed into slits. You just cannot stand it. Can you? She hissed. Stand what? You cannot stand to see me winning. You cannot stand that I have something going for me. You want to ship me off to a Marriott so you can sit here in your sad little house and feel superior. This is not about being superior. I said, this is about boundaries. This is my home. It is about control, she shouted, her voice echoing off the hardwood floors. You are trying to control me because you are jealous. You are jealous that I have friends. You are jealous that I have a career that people actually care about. I stared at her. The delusion was absolute. She genuinely believed that my desire to sleep in my own house without a camera crew was an act of jealousy. Is that your answer? I asked quietly. Yes, that is my answer, she spat. We are staying. We are filming. And you are going to stop being a brat about it. She turned and marched back into the kitchen. I stood there for a moment, listening to the murmurs of her friends. She is so toxic. I heard Chloe say, totally. Another voice agreed. Some people just vibrate at a low frequency. I walked into the living room. The group had fractured. While the core team, Chloe, Marco, and Tessa, were doubling down on their entitlement, a few of the others looked uncomfortable. The chef, a quiet guy named Leo, was wiping down the counter where he had spilled some juice. He looked up at me, his eyes apologetic. Sorry about the mess, he mumbled. I didn't answer. I walked past him to the dining table, which was covered in papers, schedules, mood boards, and a stack of printed sheets. I picked one up. Shot list. Day 2, 10 a.m., kitchen. Morning ritual. Product placement. 12 p.m., deck. Group meditation, 2 p.m., bedroom. Sanctuary. My eyes snagged on the last line. Scene details. Tessa sitting in the doorway of master bedroom, soft light, voiceover about finding peace in chaos. Note, use owner's bed for texture shots if possible. My hand shook. Use owner's bed. They were planning to go into my room, the room I had locked. They were planning to use my bed, my sheets, my private sanctuary as a prop for a video about finding peace. It was not just invasive, it was predatory. They were harvesting the texture of my life to sell a lie. I crumpled the paper in my fist. I walked to the front door. I needed to get the neighbor's mail. I needed to do something normal, something administrative, to keep from screaming. I opened the door and almost bumped into the fisherman. He was standing on the porch, his hand raised as if to knock. He was holding a thick manila envelope. Morning, he said, his voice gravelly. Morning, I said, trying to smooth the paper in my hand. Postman dropped this in my box by mistake. He said, handing me the envelope. Figured it was important. It looks official. Thank you, I said. I took the envelope. It was heavy. He did not leave. He stood there, looking past me into the house, where the sound of Marco shouting directions was drifting out. Quiet weekend. Huh? He said dryly. I flinched. I am sorry. I told them to keep it down. He shrugged. Not about the noise, really. Just funny how things work out. What do you mean? I asked. He looked at me, his eyes sharp under the brim of his hat. Your sister, the loud one. Tessa? Yeah, Tessa. He paused, chewing on his cheek. Recognized her yesterday. She came down here about 3 years ago. Tried to rent this same house. I stared at him. What? Yeah. The old owner? The city fellow? He was looking for a long-term tenant. She came down, looked at it, wanted it bad. Gave him a sob story about needing a place to write or heal or something. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ocean breeze. Tessa had never mentioned this. Why didn't she get it? I asked. Fisherman smirked. Credit check? Didn't qualify. Owner said she had more debt than income. She made a scene in the driveway. Screamed that she deserved it more than anyone. He adjusted his hat. Just thought you should know. It ain't a coincidence she is here now. She has been watching this house for a long time. He turned and walked away, his boots crunching on the gravel. I stood on the porch, clutching the envelope. It was not a random visit. It was not a housewarming. She had wanted this house. She had failed to get it. And now that I had it, she was here to claim it. She was here to act out the fantasy she had been denied 3 years ago. My family's beach house. The lie made sense now. She was rewriting history to include herself as the owner. I went back inside, bypassing the chaos in the living room, and went straight to the bathroom. I locked the door. I sat on the edge of the tub and called my mother. Hazel? Mom answered on the first ring. Her voice sounded tight. Is everything okay? Tessa posted a video and, well, you are not in it. Mom, I said, cutting her off, I need you to tell me the truth. About what? About Tessa and money. There was a silence on the line. A long, heavy silence. I just talked to a neighbor. I said, he told me Tessa tried to rent this house 3 years ago and was rejected for bad credit. Mom, why is she really here? I heard a sniffle. Then, the dam broke. Oh, Hazel. Mom sobbed. It is a mess. It is such a mess. Tell me, I commanded. She is in trouble. Hazel, real trouble. The credit cards are just the tip of it. She took out a loan, a private loan, from some not very nice people. My stomach dropped. A loan shark? I don't know, Mom cried. She just said she needed cash fast to keep up appearances. She said if she didn't pay them back by next month, they were going to sue her or, worse, and then she found out you bought the house. I closed my eyes. And she told us that if she could just get this sponsorship deal, the one with the wellness brand, it would pay off the interest. She said she needed a location. She said you owed her. I owed her? I whispered. I owed her what? Mom's voice was small. She said you have always been the lucky one, the stable one. She said it was not fair that you had the money for a down payment and she didn't. So we thought, if you just let her stay for a weekend, you thought you would use me. I said, you thought you would use my home as a set to pay off her debts, and you didn't tell me. We didn't want to worry you, Mom pleaded. You were so fragile after the divorce. We were just trying to help, helping her by hurting me. I said, that is not help, Mom. That is sacrifice, and I am done being the lamb. I hung up. I sat there, looking at the bath mat. The betrayal was so complete, it was almost impressive. My entire family had conspired to turn my sanctuary into a bailout fund for my sister's vanity. They saw me not as a person, but as a resource. Hazel is stable. Hazel can take it. Hazel will absorb the impact. I looked at the envelope in my hand. The one the fisherman had given me. I turned it over. It was addressed to Blue Heron Holdings, LLC. My breath hitched. I had never given that name to anyone, not to Mom, not to Tessa. I had used a registered agent address for the filing specifically to keep it off the local mail routes. I tore it open. Inside was a letter from the county clerk. Confirmation of change of mailing address request. Dear property owner, this letter is to confirm that the mailing address for tax assessments regarding 104 Dune Road has been updated to... I read the address. It was a P.O. box in the city. Tessa's city. I felt the blood roar in my ears. This was not just about a weekend. This was not just about a video. Someone had accessed the county records. Someone had impersonated the LLC manager. Someone was trying to redirect my property tax bills, my legal notices, my official correspondence to a box I did not control. If I missed a tax bill, the county could place a lien on the house. If I missed a legal notice, I could lose the title. Tessa was not just using the house. She was trying to hijack the administration of it. She was trying to insert herself into the paper trail of ownership. The fear that hit me then was not the anxiety of a younger sister. It was the cold, sharp fear of a victim of fraud. This was a crime. I stood up. My knees were steady. My hands were steady. I walked out of the bathroom. I walked into the kitchen. Tessa was there, laughing at something Marco had said. She was holding a bottle of green juice. I ignored her. I walked to the counter where I had set up my laptop and portable printer earlier that morning, the one corner they had not touched because it looked too officey. I opened a document. I typed 3 words at the top, in bold, 24-point font. Notice to vacate. I typed the date. 2. Tessa Watson and all associated guests. From Hazel Watson, Managing Member, Blue Heron Holdings, LLC. You are hereby notified that your license to occupy the premises at 104 Dune Road is revoked effective immediately. You are trespassing on private property. You are ordered to vacate the premises, removing all personal property and equipment, no later than 10 a.m. tomorrow. Sunday, February 1st. Failure to vacate by this time will result in the involvement of local law enforcement to effect your removal. No further warnings will be given. Signed, Hazel Watson. I hit print. The whir of the printer was the only sound in the room for a moment. Then, the paper slid out. I picked it up. The ink was still warm. I walked over to the kitchen island. Tessa was watching me, a smirk playing on her lips. What are you doing now? Hazel? Writing a poem? I placed the paper in the center of the island, right next to her stress relief tincture. I looked her in the eye. You have until 10 in the morning tomorrow. I said. Tessa picked up the paper. She glanced at it, her eyes scanning the legal language. Then she laughed, a bright, incredulous laugh. She crumpled the paper into a ball and dropped it on the floor. You are pathetic, she said. You are not going to call the police on your own sister. Mom would never forgive you. She stepped closer, invading my personal space, smelling of coconut and arrogance. You won't do it, she whispered. You don't have the guts. I looked at the crumpled paper on the floor. I looked at the team watching us, phones in hand, recording the drama for later content. I looked back at Tessa. She was right about the old Hazel. The old Hazel would have cried. The old Hazel would have picked up the paper and apologized. But the old Hazel didn't own a house, and the old Hazel didn't know about the change of address form. I didn't say anything. I just turned around and walked out of the kitchen. Leaving the paper on the floor, I went to my room and locked the door. I sat on the bed and pulled out my phone. I had a deadline, 10 a.m. If she thought I was bluffing, she was about to learn the difference between a sister and a landlord. I opened the camera app and took a picture of the time. Then I took a picture of the door lock. I was not writing a poem. I was building a case. The deadline was 12 hours away. I had spent the night in a state of fitful, shallow sleep, my body rigid on the mattress, listening to the house settle around me. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a footstep approaching my door. When the sun finally bleached the sky a pale, watery gray, I did not feel rested. I felt wired. My nerves stretched so tight they hummed. I unlocked my bedroom door at 7 in the morning, expecting the hungover silence of a party that had gone on too late. I was prepared to find bodies sleeping on the couches, empty bottles on the counters, the debris of a night spent ignoring my rules. Instead, I opened the door to the smell of quiche and expensive coffee. Downstairs, the house was not asleep. It was buzzing. I walked to the railing of the loft and looked down into the living room. My breath caught in my throat. The room was full. Not just the 12 people I knew about, the crew, the friends, the hangers-on, but strangers. There were at least 20 people milling about my living room. Some were wearing yoga pants. Others were in Sunday brunch attire. There was a woman I recognized from the local bakery. There was the man who ran the surf shop down the street. The furniture had been rearranged again. The rental tables were set up in a long communal line, covered in white linens and centerpieces made of driftwood and white roses. Standing at the head of the room, near the fireplace, was Tessa. She was wearing a white linen jumpsuit, her hair perfectly tousled, a microphone, a literal microphone, in her hand. Marco was circling her, camera low, capturing her from a heroic angle. "Welcome, everyone!" Tessa's voice boomed, amplified by a small portable speaker hidden somewhere. "Thank you so much for coming on such short notice. When I saw the beauty of this coastline, I knew we couldn't just take from it. We had to give back. That is why today's surprise brunch is dedicated to the Ocean Preservation Fund." Applause broke out. Polite, enthusiastic applause from the neighbors I had not yet met, from the people I was supposed to be building a life alongside. I gripped the railing. She had not just ignored my eviction notice. She had escalated. She had turned a trespassing dispute into a community charity event. If I went down there and started screaming, if I demanded everyone leave, I would not look like a homeowner protecting her property. I would look like a monster kicking out a room full of charitable neighbors. I would be the crazy sister ruining the Ocean Preservation Fund. She was weaponizing social pressure. She was using the town against me. My chest tightened. It was a physical sensation, a band of iron crushing my ribs, my hands, resting on the white wood of the banister, began to tremble. This was her superpower, the ability to construct a reality so shiny, so virtuous, that the truth looked ugly by comparison. I closed my eyes. Calm is not consent. I repeated it in my head. Calm is not consent. I walked down the stairs. I did not run. I did not shout. I moved with the slow, deliberate pace of someone walking underwater. Heads turned as I reached the bottom step. Tessa saw me. Her eyes flickered with a moment of panic. Then she smiled. A wide, predatory beatitude. "And here she is," Tessa announced, gesturing to me with the hand holding the microphone. "The owner of this beautiful sanctuary. My sister Hazel. Let's give her some love for opening her home to us." The room clapped. I felt the heat of their gaze. They were smiling at me, grateful, oblivious. I did not smile back. I walked past Tessa, ignoring the microphone she thrust toward me, and went straight to the kitchen. It was a staging area. Leo, the chef, was plating miniature avocado toasts. Chloe was managing a station with a laptop and a card reader. I stood next to Chloe. She looked up, her expression guarded. "What is this?" I asked, my voice low enough that the room couldn't hear, but hard enough that Chloe flinched. "It is a charity brunch," Chloe whispered, avoiding my eyes. Tessa decided to pivot. She wanted to add a philanthropic angle to the content. "It plays better with the sponsors." I looked at the laptop screen. It was open to a donation page. There was a QR code printed on a card next to the computer. "Scan to donate to the Ocean Preservation Fund." I pulled out my phone. "What are you doing?" Chloe asked, her voice rising in alarm. "I am donating," I said flatly. I opened my camera and scanned the code. A link popped up. I clicked it. It did not go to a 501c3 website. It did not go to an environmental NGO. It went to a PayPal pool. The account name was T. Watson Ventures. I stared at the screen. The Ocean Preservation Fund was Tessa's personal slush fund. She was collecting money from my neighbors, in my house, for a fake charity, likely to pay off the loan sharks my mother had told me about. I felt a wave of nausea. This was fraud. It was wire fraud, charity fraud, theft by deception, and it was happening under my roof. I looked up at the room. A kind-faced woman in a floral dress was handing a $20 bill to one of Tessa's friends, who was tucking it into a jar. "Excuse me," a voice said beside me. I turned. It was a young woman, maybe 22, holding a mimosa. She looked uneasy. "Are you Hazel?" she asked. "Yes." I said, "I am so sorry to bother you." She lowered her voice. "But I tried to donate via the link, and it came up as a personal account. It didn't look official. I just wanted to check before I sent $100. My heart hammered. This was it. The crack in the facade. Don't send it, I said quietly. The woman's eyes widened. What? Don't send the money. I repeated. It is not a registered charity. She looked at me, then at Tessa, who was currently laughing with the surf shop owner, looking like the picture of altruism. Oh my God, the woman whispered. I did not make a scene. I did not jump on a table. Instead, I held up my phone and took a screenshot of the PayPal landing page. I took a photo of the QR code. I took a photo of the donation jar full of cash. I recorded the timestamps. I walked over to the woman who had spoken to me. If I were you, I said, my voice steady, I would enjoy the free food and keep your wallet in your bag. She nodded, backing away, looking at Tessa with a new, dawning horror. I retreated to the corner of the room, near the back door. I needed to be invisible. I needed to watch. I saw Chloe watching me. She looked terrified. She was tapping her nails against the granite countertop, her eyes darting between me and Tessa. 10 minutes later, while Tessa was distracted giving a toast to sisterhood in the sea, Chloe slipped out the back door. I followed her. She was standing by the trash cans, smoking a cigarette with shaking hands. When she saw me, she jumped. You know? Don't you? Chloe said. I know it is a fake charity. I said, I know the money is going to her account. Chloe exhaled a long plume of smoke. It is not just the charity. Hazel. I stopped. What else? Chloe looked around the side of the house to make sure we were alone. She dropped the cigarette and crushed it with the heel of her sneaker. The contract with Glow and Gather, she said rapidly. The sponsor. They are strict, like corporate compliance strict. They require a location release form for any private property used in a campaign. I didn't sign a release. I said, I know, Chloe said, but they have one on file. I stared at her. How? Chloe bit her lip. Tessa gave it to me to upload last week. It was signed, or it looked signed. I felt the blood drain from my face. She forged my signature? Chloe shook her head. Not exactly. She didn't trace it. She has a file on her laptop. It is called Assets. I saw it when I was transferring footage. Assets? She scans things. Chloe said, old birthday cards, checks, documents from your parents. She has a high-res scan of your signature from a holiday card you sent 3 years ago. She just lifted it in Photoshop and pasted it onto the release form. I felt sick. Physically, violently sick. It wasn't just a forgery. It was a violation of intimacy. She had kept a card where I had probably written love, Hazel, and she had harvested it. She had turned my affection into a tool for fraud. She repurposes people. I realized she doesn't just cross boundaries. She mines the people who love her for parts. My house, my credit, my signature, my reputation. We were all just raw materials for the factory of Tessa. Why are you telling me this? I asked Chloe. Chloe looked at the back door. Because I am 24 and I don't want to go to jail for being an accessory to fraud. And because she treated you like garbage yesterday, and I have a sister. I nodded. Do you have the email? I asked. The sponsor's email. Chloe pulled out her phone. She typed something and hit send. I just forwarded you the contact sheet for the brand manager and the compliance officer. Good luck. She walked back inside, leaving me alone with the trash cans. I did not go back to the brunch. I walked around the house to the front, entered through the side door that led to the garage, and slipped into the small laundry room. It was the only room in the house that had not been staged. I sat on top of the dryer. I opened my laptop. My hands were trembling, but my mind was ice cold. The anxiety was still there, buzzing in my chest. But I had wrapped it in a layer of administrative detachment. I was not Hazel Watson, the sister. I was Hazel Watson, the whistleblower. I opened my email. I found the message from Chloe to legal@glowandgather.com. partnerships@glowandgather.com. Subject: unauthorized use of property / fraudulent release form. Tessa Watson campaign. I began to type. To whom it may concern. My name is Hazel Watson. I am the sole owner of the property located at 104 Dune Road, currently being used for a social media campaign by your contracted influencer, Tessa Watson. I am writing to formally notify you that I have not granted permission for my property to be used for commercial purposes, filming, or events. The location release form you have on file was not signed by me. It appears to be a forgery using a digital lift of my signature from personal correspondence. Furthermore, the current charity brunch, being live-streamed from my home, purportedly raising money for the Ocean Preservation Fund, is directing funds to a personal PayPal account linked to Ms. Watson. Attached to this email, please find 1. A copy of the deed to 104 Dune Road, proving my sole ownership. 2. A screenshot of the donation link directing funds to T. Watson Ventures. 3. A formal statement that I am issuing a trespass notice to Ms. Watson and her team, effective immediately. I am requesting that you immediately cease any association with content filmed on my property and investigate the validity of the contract submitted to you. Regards, Hazel Watson. I read it over once. It was dry. It was factual. It was devastating. I hit send. I sat in the laundry room and waited. I expected it to take days. I expected a bureaucratic auto-reply, but Glow and Gather was a corporate entity, and corporate entities fear one thing above all else: liability. 7 minutes later, my phone pinged. It was not an email. It was a scream from the living room. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated rage. I closed my laptop. I stood up. I walked out of the laundry room and down the hall toward the living room. The brunch was disintegrating. Tessa was standing in the middle of the room, clutching her phone. Her face was a mask of red blotches. The charm was gone. The namaste persona had evaporated. "Marco!" she screamed. "Turn the camera off!" Marco lowered the camera, looking confused. "What is it? They dropped me!" she shrieked. She looked at the phone, reading the email again, her hands shaking so hard the device was a blur. "They just canceled the contract. Effective immediately. They are demanding the inventory back." The room went silent. The neighbors holding their mimosas looked around, sensing the shift in atmospheric pressure. "How?" Tessa yelled. "How did they know?" She looked up. Her eyes scanned the room, wild and desperate. Then they landed on me. I was standing in the hallway entrance, leaning against the doorframe. I was not hiding anymore. "You," she whispered. She marched toward me. The neighbors parted like the Red Sea. "You did this," she hissed, stopping inches from my face. "You emailed them." "I did," I said calmly. "I told them the truth." "You ruined me," she screamed. Spittle flew from her mouth. "Do you have any idea what you just did? That was $3,000. That was my rent. That was my life. It was fraud." I said, "And it was my house." She stared at me, her chest heaving. For a second, I thought she was going to hit me. Her hand twitched at her side. But Tessa was not a physical fighter. She was a psychological one. She realized, in that moment, that she had an audience. She couldn't hit me. She had to discredit me. She pulled her phone up and dialed a number. She put it on speaker. She looked me dead in the eye as it rang. "Who are you calling?" I asked. "Someone who knows how crazy you really are," she said. The line clicked. "Hello?" The voice was deep, familiar, and tired. It was Mark, my ex-husband. "Mark!" Tessa cried, her voice shifting instantly into a sob. "I am so sorry to call you. I don't know what to do. Hazel is having an episode." I froze. An episode. The code word they had used during the divorce whenever I had expressed anger or grief. "What is going on?" Mark asked. His voice was guarded. "We are at the beach house." Tessa wept. "She invited us down, and now she is screaming at everyone. She is throwing things. She just sabotaged my job." "Mark, honestly, I think she is off her meds. She is acting so unstable. I am scared for her." I stood there, paralyzed. It was a masterclass in triangulation. She was bringing in the one person whose opinion still had the power to hurt me. And she was painting me as the aggressor. She was using my history of depression, the meds comment, to invalidate my current reality. She was not just fighting for the house. She was fighting to destroy my credibility so that nothing I said about the fraud would be believed. "Mark," I said loudly, "I am standing right here." "Hazel?" Mark's voice came through the speaker. "Tessa says you are kicking them out?" "I am," I said, "because they are trespassing, and because she is running a scam out of my kitchen. She is paranoid." "Mark!" Tessa shouted over me. "She is hallucinating things about scams. She is not well." I looked at the neighbors. They were watching with wide eyes. Some looked sympathetic to Tessa, the crying woman in white. Others looked confused. I realized I could not win this argument on the phone. Engaging with the lie only validated it. I walked forward and plucked the phone out of Tessa's hand. "Hey," she yelled. I put the phone to my ear. "Mark," I said quietly. "Hazel," Mark said, sounding exhausted. "Why is your sister telling me you are unstable?" "Because I stopped letting her use me." I said, "Goodbye, Mark." I hung up. I handed the phone back to Tessa. She stared at me, her mouth open. She had expected me to crumble. She had expected me to grab the phone and plead my case, to cry to Mark, to look exactly as unstable as she claimed, by hanging up. I had refused the role. "Everyone needs to leave," I announced to the room. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the silence. "The event is over. The charity is not real. If you donated money, I suggest you request a refund immediately." The neighbors began to move. The spell was broken. They set down their glasses. They picked up their purses. They avoided Tessa's eyes. One by one, they filed out the front door. Within 5 minutes, the room was empty of everyone except Tessa and her team. Tessa stood in the center of the wreckage of her brunch. The white linens were stained with spilled orange juice. The balloon arch looked saggy. "You are going to pay for this," she whispered. "I will make sure everyone knows what you did. I will tell Mom. I will tell everyone. You have until 10 o'clock tomorrow." I said. I turned and walked up the stairs. I went into my room and locked the door. My legs gave out. I slid down the wall until I hit the floor. My heart was beating so fast it felt like a bird trapped in my ribcage. The adrenaline was crashing, leaving me shaking and cold. I had done it. I had blown up the bridge. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mark. "Mark, if you need help, call me. But don't drag me into your family drama." I deleted the text. I looked at the time. It was 2 p.m. The deadline was 20 hours away. I knew Tessa. She would not leave quietly. The panic I had seen was real, but it would metabolize into rage. She had lost her money, her sponsor, and her face. She had nothing left to lose. I needed backup. I dialed the local police non-emergency line. "Police Department, Dispatcher Davis." "Hi," I said. "My name is Hazel Watson. I am the owner of 104 Dune Road. I have issued a formal notice to vacate to a group of guests who are refusing to leave. The deadline is tomorrow at 10 a.m. "Okay, ma'am," the dispatcher said. "Are they violent?" "Not physically," I said, "but there is a lot of aggression. I am requesting a civil standby. I would like an officer present tomorrow morning to ensure they leave the property without incident." "We can have a unit swing by at 10, the dispatcher said. "Just call us if it escalates before then. Thank you." I hung up. I stood up and walked to the window. From my second-story vantage point, I could see the ocean. The waves were gray and choppy, beaten by the wind. I had always been the peacemaker. I had always been the one to absorb the shock, to smooth the edges, to apologize for things I hadn't done just to keep the family dinner from turning into a war. But looking at the ocean, I realized that peace was not something you kept. It was something you made. And sometimes, to make peace, you had to go to war. I was about to detonate my family. My mother would never forgive me. Tessa would hate me for the rest of her life. The narrative at Thanksgiving would always be about how Hazel snapped and kicked her sister out on the street. I pressed my hand against the cold glass. Let them talk. I thought, I would rather be the villain in their story than a ghost in my own. Downstairs, I heard the sound of glass shattering. Tessa was breaking things. I didn't go down. I didn't flinch. I just watched the waves, counting the hours until 10 o'clock. At 9:45 in the morning, the house felt less like a home and more like a film set where the production had gone horribly over budget. The air was thick with the smell of stale champagne and aggressive perfume. I stood at the top of the stairs, looking down at the living room. My deadline was 15 minutes away. I walked down the stairs. I was wearing a navy blue button-down shirt and stiff jeans. I had brushed my hair back into a tight, severe ponytail. I was not dressed for a beach weekend. I was dressed for a deposition. In my hand, I carried a black accordion folder. When I reached the bottom step, the room went quiet. The tribe was in various stages of disarray. About half of them, mostly the peripheral friends who had looked uncomfortable during the fake charity brunch, were already packed. Their bags were stacked by the door, and they were staring at their phones, avoiding eye contact with both me and Tessa, but the core group remained. Tessa, Marco, and 2 other women were sitting on the white rental sofas, their legs crossed, sipping coffee as if they had all the time in the world. I walked to the center of the room. I did not raise my voice. "It is 9:45, I said. "You have 15 minutes to vacate the property." Tessa looked up over the rim of her mug. She smiled, but it was a brittle, dangerous thing. Her eyes were red-rimmed, likely from a night spent raging, but her makeup was fresh. Marco immediately lifted his camera. The red recording light blinked on. "And here she is," Tessa narrated, her voice pitching up into that breathless, victimized tone she used for her stories. "The sister who talks about boundaries but doesn't care about community. We are just a group of women trying to heal, trying to find a safe space. And she is literally kicking us out onto the street. She looked at me, waiting. She wanted me to scream. She wanted me to wave my arms and yell that she was a fraud. She wanted a clip she could edit out of context to prove that I was the unstable one." I looked directly into the lens. My face remained completely slack. "You do not have permission to be here," I said. Tessa rolled her eyes. "Oh my God. Hazel, stop acting like a robot. We are family. You are not going to call the cops. You have 14 minutes, I said. "You do not have permission to be here." I turned away from the camera and walked to the front door. I unlocked it and propped it open with a heavy piece of driftwood. The cold Atlantic wind rushed in, cutting through the warm, stale air of the house. Marco followed me, circling like a shark. "So, you don't care about Tessa's mental health?" he asked, acting the part of the concerned journalist. "You don't care that this retreat was her lifeline?" I stared through him. "You do not have permission to be here." It was a metronome, a shield. Every time I said it, I felt a little more ground form beneath my feet. I was not engaging in their narrative. I was stating a legal fact. At 9:55, a car pulled into the driveway. It was not a guest. It was a black and white cruiser with the seal of the township on the door. The silence in the living room was absolute. The camera in Marco's hand lowered slightly. Tessa stood up, her face draining of color. She had gambled on my guilt, on my fear of embarrassment, on the decades of conditioning that said, "You never, ever involve outsiders in family business." She had lost. 2 officers stepped out of the car. They were not aggressive. They adjusted their belts and walked up the gravel drive with the slow, unbothered pace of men who had seen every variation of domestic dispute the coast had to offer. I stepped onto the porch to meet them. "Good morning," the older officer said. He had a gray mustache and a name tag that read, "Officer Miller." "We received a call about a civil standby." "Good morning, officer," I said. "I am Hazel Watson. I am the property owner. I issued a notice to vacate yesterday with a deadline of 10 o'clock this morning. These individuals have not left." Tessa burst onto the porch behind me. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "I am her sister. I have rights." Officer Miller looked at Tessa, then back at me. "Ma'am," he said to Tessa, "are you a tenant? Do you have a lease?" "No," I don't have a lease, Tessa scoffed. It is a family house. I have been staying here. You can't just kick out a resident. I opened the black accordion folder. My hands were steady. I pulled out the first document, the deed, recorded 2 weeks ago, showing Blue Heron Holdings, LLC, as the sole owner. I pulled out the second document, the Articles of Organization for the LLC, listing me as the sole member. I pulled out the third document, the printed notice to vacate, with the time-stamped photo of it sitting on the kitchen counter. She is not a tenant, I said, handing the papers to the officer. She has been here for 48 hours as a guest. I revoked that invitation in writing yesterday. There is no rental agreement. There is no exchange of funds. She is trespassing. The officer reviewed the papers. He took his time. He looked at the deed. He looked at the notice. Everything looks in order here, he said, handing the folder back to me. He turned to Tessa. Ma'am, the owner has revoked permission for you to be on the property. Since you have no lease and have not established residency, you need to leave. Now. Tessa stared at him, her mouth opening and closing. The reality was crashing down on her. The camera was useless against a badge. The narrative didn't work on the penal code. But she wasn't done. She had one grenade left, and she pulled the pin with a look of pure malice. She didn't pay for this house, Tessa screamed, pointing a manicured finger at me. I froze. She is lying, Tessa continued, her voice rising to a shriek. She bought this place with family money. My mother's money. It is a family asset. She just put it in her name to hide it from the taxes. But it belongs to all of us. The officer paused. He looked at me, his expression shifting slightly. Is there a dispute regarding ownership of the funds used to purchase the property? He asked. No, I said. My voice sounded thin to my own ears. I paid for this house with my own savings and a settlement from my divorce. She is a liar, Tessa yelled. Call Mom. Ask her. Ask her where the down payment really came from. My stomach dropped. I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. I knew I had paid the down payment. I had wired the money from my personal savings account. I had seen the numbers leave my ledger. But Tessa's confidence was terrifying. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking now. Just a little. I will call her, I said. I put the phone on speaker. I held it out so the officers and Tessa could hear. It rang once, twice. Hazel? Mom's voice was breathless, high-pitched. She sounded like she had been crying. Mom, I said, the police are here. Oh my God. Mom sobbed. Hazel, please, please don't do this. Don't arrest your sister. I am not arresting her. Mom, I am asking her to leave. But she is telling the police that I didn't pay for this house. She is saying I used family money. There was a silence on the line. A long, suffocating silence that seemed to suck the air out of the porch. Mom, I asked, tell them I bought this house with my own money. The silence stretched. I watched the officer's face. He was waiting. Finally, Mom spoke. Her voice was a whisper. Hazel, honey, it is complicated. What is complicated? I asked. The world tilted on its axis. The money in your savings account. Mom wept. The money you used for the wire transfer. It wasn't all yours. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. What are you talking about? That was my salary. That was my divorce settlement. We had to move some things around. Mom stammered. A few years ago, when Dad got sick, we accessed the account. We borrowed some, and then we put it back. But the money we put back, it came from the family trust. Technically, that money is commingled. I stared at the phone. You accessed my account? I whispered. You gave me power of attorney, she cried. Years ago, when you were in the hospital for your burnout, we never took you off it. I remembered. 3 years ago, I had been hospitalized for exhaustion. I had signed a stack of papers to let my parents handle my bills while I was incapacitated. I had never revoked it, and they had used it. They had treated my bank account like a slush fund. They had taken my money out, used it, and replaced it with family trust money, money that came with strings, money that Tessa technically had a claim to. Tessa was smiling. It was a triumphant, shark-like smile. "See?" Tessa said to the officer. "Commingled funds. It is a family asset. She can't kick me out." I looked at the officer. I felt dizzy. The betrayal was so deep, so structural, that I couldn't process it. My mother had not only stolen from me, she had planted a legal landmine in my finances that would allow my sister to claim ownership of my life. The officer looked uncomfortable. "This is a civil matter regarding the funds," he said. "However, the deed is in the name of the LLC. Unless there is a court order stating otherwise, the LLC is the owner. And this lady," he pointed to me, "is the agent. The funding dispute is for a courtroom, not a driveway. You still have to leave." Tessa's smile vanished. "But," she started, "you have to leave." "Ma'am," the officer repeated. Stepping closer, "The paperwork stands until a judge says it doesn't. You can sue her later if you want. But right now, you are trespassing." Tessa let out a scream of frustration. She spun around and stormed back into the house. Mom was still sobbing on the phone. "Hazel, please, you are humiliating us." I hung up. I looked at the officer. "Thank you," I said. My voice was steady, but I felt like I was made of glass. He nodded. He lowered his voice. "Look, miss, if they accessed your accounts without your knowledge, even with power of attorney, if it was not for your benefit, that is theft, and if your sister signed anything pretending to be you—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. "I know," I said. "Do you want to file a report?" he asked. "Regarding the forgery you mentioned on the dispatch call?" I looked at the open door. I could hear Tessa throwing things into a suitcase. I could hear the tribe scrambling to get out before the handcuffs came out. If I filed a report now, Tessa would be arrested. It would be a felony. It would destroy her life completely. It would destroy my parents. I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. I needed to see the extent of the damage. I needed to see what else they had taken. Not today. I said, "I just want them out." "Understood." He said, "We will stand by until the premises are vacated." It took 20 minutes. I stood on the porch and watched them leave. It was a parade of humiliation. The wellness influencers dragged their suitcases through the gravel, their heads down, hiding their faces from the neighbors who had gathered to watch. The rental tables were left folded in the living room. The balloon arch had popped in several places, looking like a diseased lung. Tessa was the last to leave. She dragged a massive Louis Vuitton trunk down the steps. She stopped in front of me. She didn't look sad anymore. She looked filled with a cold, pure hatred. "You think you won," she hissed. "But you didn't. You just started a war you can't afford. Mom is never going to speak to you again." "Good," I said. She stared at me, searching for a weakness. She didn't find one. She spat on the ground near my feet. A gesture so vulgar, so unlike her curated persona, that it was almost shocking. Then she got into her SUV and slammed the door. I watched the convoy drive away. I watched until the last taillight disappeared around the bend. The officers nodded to me and returned to their cruiser. The house was quiet. I walked back inside. The silence was different now. It wasn't the peaceful silence of the first day. It was the heavy, ringing silence of a battlefield after the shooting stops. I walked through the living room. There were scuff marks on the floor. There was a red wine stain on the white rug I had bought 3 days ago. I walked into the kitchen. My laptop was sitting on the counter. I frowned. I had left it in the laundry room. I walked over to it. It was open, but it wasn't my laptop. It was a sleek, silver MacBook Pro. It had a sticker on the lid. Glow and Gather Creator Core. It was Tessa's, or maybe Chloe's, in the panic to leave, in the rush to avoid arrest. Someone had left it behind. The screen was dark. I tapped the spacebar. It didn't ask for a password. It was already logged in. It was open to a Finder window, a folder titled Hazel_Assets. I felt a cold prickle on my skin. I clicked the folder. Hundreds of files populated the screen. I scrolled. There were photos of my renovation journal. Someone had photographed every page of my private notes, my budget calculations, my "what I will not apologize for" list. There were photos of my closet, close-ups of my clothes, with captions in the file names: old_season_Zara, thrift_store_junk. They were cataloging my poverty to mock me. But then, the files got darker. Scan_tax return _2023.pdf scan _divorce _settlement _final .pdf photo _ssn _card .jpg photo _passport .jpg. I clicked on one. It was a high-resolution photo of my passport, taken on a bedspread I recognized. My parents' guest bed. I clicked another. Medical _records _burnout. PDF. They had everything. This wasn't just about a weekend. This wasn't just about a location for a video. Tessa, and my mother, had been building a dossier on me for years. They had copies of my identity. They had my financial history. They had the ammunition to steal my identity, or to destroy it. I realized then why Tessa had been so confident about the family money. She had seen the transaction history. She knew exactly how the money moved because she had been watching it the whole time. I backed out of the folder. I wanted to close the laptop. I wanted to throw it into the ocean. But I saw another window minimized in the dock. A web browser. I clicked it. It was the Secretary of State's business portal. The page was active. It was the filing history for Blue Heron Holdings, LLC. My eyes scanned the screen. Status: active, filing, date, January 15th, 2026. Most recent filing, statement of information, submitted yesterday. Yesterday, I clicked the PDF of the filing. Change of mailing address, P.O. Box, 405, Midtown Station, Tessa's P.O. Box. Change of management structure. My name was still listed as a member, but under manager, a new name had been added: Tessa Watson. I stared at the screen. The room spun. She hadn't just changed the mailing address to intercept tax bills. She had filed a formal amendment to the LLC, adding herself as a manager. If I hadn't seen this, if she had left with the laptop, I wouldn't have known. I would have gone on living here, thinking I owned the place. Meanwhile, Tessa would have had legal authority to sign contracts, take out loans against the property, or even sell it out from under me. The chaos of the weekend, the party, the brunch, the drama, it was all a smokescreen. It was a distraction. She came here to create enough noise that I wouldn't notice her logging into the Wi-Fi, accessing the state portal, and stealing my company. She needed to be physically in the house to intercept any mail confirmation that might come to the physical address. She needed to be here to verify the location if the website asked for IP confirmation. It was a heist, a corporate heist committed by my sister, funded by my mother, disguised as a wellness retreat. I sat down at the kitchen table. My legs were shaking so hard I couldn't stand. I looked at the documents spread out before me, the deed, the notice to vacate, and now, the laptop with the proof of their crime. I had thought I was fighting for my peace. I thought I was fighting for a quiet weekend. I was wrong. I was fighting for my life. If I had given in, if I had let them stay. By Monday morning, Tessa would have finalized the takeover. She would have leveraged the house for her loan sharks. She would have drained the equity, and when the foreclosure notice came, it would have come to her P.O. box, not mine. I would have been evicted from my own sanctuary without ever knowing why. I looked around the empty kitchen. The sun was streaming in, illuminating the dust motes and the single, forgotten bottle of stress relief tincture on the counter. I felt a strange, cold clarity settle over me. The anxiety was gone. The fear of being the difficult sister was gone. The guilt about making Mom cry was gone. You cannot feel guilty about hurting people who are actively trying to kill you. And this was an attempt on my life, my financial life, my legal life, my independent life. I reached for my phone. I didn't call Mark. I didn't call my friends. I called the number for the local locksmith. "Hello?" A voice answered. "Hi," I said. My voice was rock steady. "I need my locks changed. All of them. And I need it done today. It is an emergency." I hung up. Then I pulled the laptop closer. I didn't delete the files. I didn't log out. I opened my own cloud drive. I began to upload. I uploaded the photos of my passport. I uploaded the stolen tax returns. I uploaded the screenshot of the LLC change. I uploaded the entire Hazel_assets folder. I was creating a backup, because the war wasn't over. The police had cleared the driveway, but the enemy was still on the deed. I sat alone in my beach house, the sound of the ocean roaring outside, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel lonely. I felt ready. I was Hazel Watson, managing member, and I was about to conduct a hostile takeover of my own family. The locksmith left at 4 p.m. The sound of the deadbolt sliding home, a heavy metallic thunk, was the first truly comforting sound I had heard in 48 hours. I stood in the foyer, running my thumb over the new silver key. It was a small piece of metal, but it represented the only thing I had left to hold on to: control. I did not rest. I did not sit down to process the trauma of the morning. I got in my car and drove straight to the law office of Robert H. Miller. Mr. Miller was a man of few words and many filing cabinets. He sat behind a mahogany desk that looked like it had survived several hurricanes. Listening as I explained the situation, I didn't cry. I didn't use emotional language. I laid out the documents I had printed: the deed, the unauthorized amendment to the Articles of Organization, and the screenshots of the change of address request. When I finished, he took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "You were lucky you caught this, Ms. Watson," he said, his voice gravelly. "How bad is it?" I asked. If she had listed herself as a manager, which she did, she would have had the legal authority to bind the LLC to contracts. He explained, she could have taken out a mortgage against the property. She could have signed a lease. She could have sold it, provided she found a buyer who didn't look too closely at the timeline. "And the address change?" I asked. "That is the oldest trick in the book," he said. "You change the mailing address so the owner doesn't see the notices. Default notices, tax liens, foreclosure warnings. They all go to the P.O. box, while the owner sits in the house thinking everything is fine until the sheriff shows up to evict them." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. It was not just a prank, it was an extraction plan. "We need to file a statement of correction immediately," Miller said, pulling a yellow legal pad toward him, "and I'm going to request an audit trail from the Secretary of State's office. We need the IP address of the computer that made the changes. If it matches a device your sister owns, you have grounds for criminal fraud charges." I nodded. "Do it." I left his office an hour later with a file folder thick with certified mail receipts. I had locked down my credit. I had placed a fraud alert on my title insurance. I had become, in the span of an afternoon, a bureaucrat of my own survival. I drove back to the house as the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in bruises of purple and charcoal. When I walked into the kitchen, the silence was absolute. The rental tables were gone. I had dragged them to the garage myself. The balloon arch was in the trash. But the ghost of the invasion still lingered. The smell of Tessa's perfume seemed to be baked into the drywall. I sat at the kitchen table and began to work. I opened my laptop, my actual laptop, not the stolen one Tessa had left behind, and started compiling the evidence. I created a digital timeline. January 15th, LLC formed. January 20th, mailing address changed to Tessa's P.O. box. January 21st, manager added, Tessa Watson. Yesterday, the forged release form sent to Glow and Gather. Today, the fake charity fund collection. I printed everything. I hole-punched the pages. I placed them in a 3-ring binder. It was boring work. It was tedious, unglamorous, administrative work. But as I snapped the metal ring shut, I realized that this was how you survived a narcissist. You didn't fight them with drama. You didn't fight them with screaming matches or emotional appeals. You fought them with timestamps. You fought them with PDF files. You fought them by being so boringly, relentlessly factual that their narrative crumbled under the weight of the truth. The sun set completely. The house went dark, save for the single lamp on the kitchen table. At 7 o'clock, Headlights swept across the front window. I didn't flinch. I watched the car pull into the driveway. It was the black SUV. Tessa was back. But this time, she was alone. There were no camera crews, no tribe, no videographer to capture her good angles. She walked up to the front door and tried the handle. It was locked. She knocked. It wasn't a polite knock. It was a demand. I picked up the binder. I walked to the door and opened it. Tessa stood there, wrapped in a heavy wool coat, shivering in the ocean wind. Her face was scrubbed clean of makeup, revealing the dark circles under her eyes. She looked smaller than she had this morning. She looked fragile, but I knew better now. I knew that her fragility was just another weapon in her arsenal. "What do you want?" I asked. I didn't invite her in. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It is freezing." "Hazel, state your business," I said. She stared at me, shocked by the coldness in my voice. She was used to Hazel the doormat, Hazel the peacemaker. She didn't know how to handle Hazel the landlord. "I just want to talk," she said. "I want to make a deal." I stepped back and held the door open. "Come in, but you stay in the kitchen, and you leave when I say so." She walked in, looking around the empty living room as if searching for her lost audience. She followed me into the kitchen and sat at the table. Keeping her coat on, I sat opposite her, the binder between us like a border wall. "Okay," she said, clasping her hands on the table. "Here is the deal. I will stop. I will stop the posts. I will stop telling people you are crazy. I will tell Mom to lay off. And in exchange?" I asked. "In exchange," she said, leaning forward, "you let me make one final video. Just one. A goodbye to the beach house video. I will frame it as, I will say, I decided to leave to focus on my inner journey. I will make you look like a supportive sister who gave me space. I just need to repair the narrative. Hazel, if I leave like this, with the police involved, my brand is dead." I looked at her. She was offering a ceasefire, but the terms were telling. She claimed she could stop the posts and tell Mom to lay off. That meant the harassment wasn't an uncontrollable reaction to her pain. It was a strategy. She had been directing the attacks, and she had the power to call them off whenever it suited her. It was a confession disguised as a negotiation. "No." I said, "Hazel, please," she whispered. "You don't understand. I am drowning." I looked at the laptop sitting on the counter, the one she had left behind, the one with the folder of my stolen identity. "I have a question for you," I said, "and I want the truth. If you lie, I call Officer Miller and I hand him the hard drive you left on my counter." Tessa's eyes darted to the laptop. She swallowed hard. "How much do you owe?" I asked. She blinked. "What? The debt?" I said. "The private loan Mom told me about. The reason you tried to steal my house. How much is it?" She looked down at her hands. She picked at a loose thread on her coat. "It is manageable," she mumbled. "I just had a cash flow issue." "Tessa," I said, my voice sharp. "The number." She took a shaky breath. 80,000, she whispered. I stared at her. $80,000. "Is that it?" I asked. She didn't answer. "Tessa, 150, she blurted out. Tears began to spill down her cheeks. "It is $150,000, plus interest. It started at 50, but the rates, they are predatory. Hazel, I took it out to launch the skincare line that failed, and then I took out another to cover the rent on the showroom, and then it just spiraled. $150,000. And you thought you would pay that back how?" I asked. "By hosting a brunch?" "No." She sniffled. "The sponsorship with Glow and Gather was going to be the down payment on a consolidation loan, but I needed an asset. I needed collateral to show the bank that I had equity." I felt a sick feeling in my stomach. "You were going to use the house," I said. "That is why you added yourself as a manager to the LLC. You were going to list the house as a business asset to secure the loan." She nodded miserably. "I didn't think you would find out. I was going to pay it off before you noticed. I just needed the paper trail. I needed the bank to see my name on a deed. You were going to mortgage my home to pay for your failed skincare line." I said, "You were going to risk the only thing I own, I would have paid it back, she insisted, her voice rising. You have always been the lucky one. Hazel, you have the corporate job. You have the savings. You don't know what it is like to be out there, chasing a dream, having to fake it every single day. I did what I had to do to survive. I looked at the binder. You forged my signature. I said, you stole my identity. You accessed my tax returns. That isn't survival. Tessa, that is predation. I didn't mean any harm, she cried. I just needed time. Intent doesn't erase impact. I said. I picked up my phone. What are you doing? She asked, panic flaring in her eyes. I am calling Mom and Dad. I said, no, don't. She reached across the table. Hazel, please, don't tell Dad. He will have a heart attack. He deserves to know why his daughter is about to be indicted if she doesn't back off. I said, I dialed. I put it on speaker. It rang 3 times before my father answered. Hazel? He sounded tired. His voice was heavy with the weight of the drama Mom had surely relayed. Your mother is very upset. Dad, is Mom there? I asked. Put her on. I heard the rustle of the phone being passed. Hazel? Mom said. Her voice was icy. I hope you are calling to apologize to your sister. I am sitting here with Tessa. I said. There was a pause. Oh, is she okay? She's fine. I said, but we need to have a family meeting. Right now. I looked at Tessa. She was burying her face in her hands. I am going to say this once. I said, and I want you all to listen, because if you interrupt me, I hang up, and the next call I make is to the district attorney. Silence on the other end. Tessa has admitted to me that she is $150,000 in debt to a private lender. I said, she has admitted that she filed fraudulent paperwork to add herself to the deed of my house in order to use it as collateral for a loan. She has admitted to forging my signature on commercial contracts. I waited for the shock. I waited for the outrage. Instead, I heard my mother sigh. We know about the debt. Hazel, Mom said quietly. I froze. You know? We knew it was bad, she said. We didn't know the exact amount, but Hazel, you have to understand, she was desperate. People do crazy things when they are desperate. We were just trying to help her find a way out. By letting her steal my house? I asked. My voice shook. You knew she was coming here. You gave her the address. You knew she was going to use the property. Did you know she changed the deed? We didn't know the specifics, Mom snapped. We just told her to do whatever she had to do to fix it. We told her you would understand. You are family. You are the strong one. You can absorb a little risk. I felt the last tether connecting me to them snap. It was a physical sensation, like a rubber band breaking in my chest. They had not been duped. They were co-conspirators. They had looked at their 2 daughters, one responsible, one reckless, and they had decided that the responsible one existed to be harvested by the reckless one. I was not a person to them. I was a resource. I was the organ donor they kept on ice, waiting for Tessa to need a kidney, or a lung, or a house. I looked at Tessa. She wasn't crying anymore. She was watching me, waiting to see if I would fold. I took a deep breath. I am reading a statement, I said, and then I am hanging up. I opened the binder to the last page, where I had written 6 words. You don't get access to me. I read. What? Mom asked. You don't get access to me. I repeated. Not my money, not my house, not my time, and not my peace. Hazel, don't be dramatic, Dad said. We can work this out. We can set up a payment plan. No, I said. Here are the new rules. If Tessa, or either of you, attempts to contact me, it will be via email only. If I see Tessa's name on one more piece of mail, one more document, or one more account, I will file a police report for identity theft and fraud. I have the evidence. I have the logs. I will put her in jail. Hazel, Mom screamed. She is your sister. I don't care, I said. And one more thing, I added. I am changing my phone number tomorrow. Do not come to this house. If you step foot on this property without a written invitation, I will have you arrested for trespassing. This is not a negotiation. I hung up. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. Tessa stared at me. Her mouth was a thin line. The fragility was gone. The desperation was gone. What was left was the cold, hard stone of a narcissist who had finally been told, "No, you are a monster." She whispered, "I am a mirror." I said, "I am just showing you what you look like." She stood up. She buttoned her coat. "You think you are so smart with your binder and your little legal threats?" She said, "But you are forgetting something." "What?" "I lived in your apartment for 3 months when you were going through the divorce." She said, "I helped you pack. I went through your boxes." So, she smiled. And it was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I have copies." "Copies of what?" "Journals," she said. "The ones you wrote when you were depressed. The ones where you talked about everything. Mark, the pills, the dark thoughts. I took pictures of them. Just in case. I felt a chill. Those journals were my rawest, most broken moments. They were the documentation of my lowest point." "If you report me," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "if you file those charges, I will leak them. I will post every single page. Everyone will see the strong, independent Hazel begging for reasons to stay alive. I will destroy your reputation. You will never get another corporate job. You will be the unstable sister forever." She leaned in. "So, do we have a deal? Or do you want to play dirty?" I looked at her. I thought about the journals. I thought about the shame of having my darkest grief exposed to the world. It was a terrifying threat. It was designed to silence me. But then I looked at the binder. I looked at the documents that proved she was a criminal. "Tessa," I said softly, "you are holding a water pistol, and I am holding a nuclear bomb." Her smile faltered. "If you release those journals," I said, "I will sue you for intentional infliction of emotional distress. I will sue you for invasion of privacy, and I will add those charges to the fraud indictment. You will not just be broke, you will be an inmate." I stood up, and honestly, I continued, "Go ahead, post them. Let people see that I struggled. Let them see that I survived. Because the difference between me and you is that I own my darkness. You are still trying to sell yours." I pointed to the door. "Get out." She stared at me for a long moment. She was calculating the odds. She realized, perhaps for the first time, that she had no leverage left. The shame she tried to weaponize was no longer mine to carry. She turned and walked out of the kitchen. I followed her to the front door. She stepped out into the night wind. She didn't look back. She didn't say goodbye. She just walked to her car, got in, and drove away. I watched the taillights fade. I closed the door. I locked the deadbolt. I engaged the chain. I walked through the house, turning off the lights one by one. The living room, the kitchen, the hallway. I walked out the back door onto the deck. The ocean was a black void, restless and loud. The wind whipped my hair across my face. It was cold, biting cold, but it felt clean. I was alone. My family was gone. My parents likely hated me. My sister was my enemy. I had no safety net, no backup plan, no one to call if I fell. But I had the house, and I had the truth. I leaned against the railing, listening to the crash of the waves. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a notification from a social media app I rarely used. New video posted. The truth about my family's beach house. I looked at the thumbnail. It was Tessa. She was sitting in her car, the interior light illuminating her tear-streaked face. The caption read, "Sometimes, you have to walk away from toxic people to save your soul." It had been posted 3 minutes ago. It already had 5,000 views. She hadn't stopped. She had just rewritten the script again. I stared at the screen. I could feel the anger rising, the old familiar urge to defend myself, to comment, to fight. But then I looked at the ocean. I slid my thumb across the screen and turned the phone off. Let her talk. I had a lawsuit to file in the morning. Thank you for listening to the story of Hazel Watson. It has been a journey through betrayal, boundaries, and the cold precision of revenge. I hope this story resonated with anyone who has ever had to fight for their own peace. I would love to hear from you. Please comment below and tell me where you are listening from. Are you Team Hazel? Or do you think family should always come first? Don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Stories for more realistic, family-centered dramas. Share your thoughts in English in the comments section. Until next time.